Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today is a solo show, and we're going to talk about the energy underneath. Shout out to the Inner Circle Mastermind 2023 and my 6-month deep dive group 2023, because it was because of you. You were the muse to bring this episode into life, because I thought rather than answer this question on a Marco Polo twice, let me make a podcast episode so more people could possibly gain benefit from it. So when I talk about the energy underneath, what I'm talking about is what emotion, what story, what belief, and what is real underneath the actions that we take and the things that we do. So I'm going to tell you a couple different stories to sort of illustrate that and then go from there. So the first story is about a friend years ago who battled with an addiction. Now, side note, we all have addictions. And if you don't know that, well, newsflash, you have an addiction. You probably have more than one. If you're a recovering addict, you have an addiction of control. If you're not a recovering addict, but you don't think you have addictions, you also have control, and you probably have others, because most of us numb by too much technology, always having your phone in your hand, scrolling Facebook, scrolling Instagram, Twitter, whatever, LinkedIn, always looking for feedback in your device or on your computer, or possibly binging too much television, like time after time after time, like out of balance binging, or possibly emotional eating, too much sugar, emotional drinking, always being busy. These are ways that we numb out and avoid our feelings. So in case you don't know, everyone has an addiction. So I hate to say that she was an addict, because we're all addicts. And in the case that and this story I'm going to share with you, she traded one addiction for another. So the energy underneath is looking at why we do something. So at first there was, and I don't know if there was ever really alcohol abuse. I don't know if she'd ever say that she was an alcoholic, but she ended up turning towards cocaine at some point. And there was, of course, you don't do cocaine casually. So she had a cocaine addiction for a little while. And then after coming out of treatment, she went to bodybuilding and competitions. And the people around her would say, "Oh my God, that's so amazing. Look at you. You're being so healthy." And I laugh because there's nothing further from health. Bodybuilding competitions are not about health at all. And in fact, it's like bodybuilding is the opposite of anorexia, or the same thing as anorexia, you just look different. Like the way that people look at themselves, talk to themselves, spend time on judging how they look, paying attention to how they look is such an addiction. Being addicted to how you look is an addiction. And so what ended up happening is that she didn't actually heal her addiction, because she never looked at what was fueling the behavior and why she was choosing, whether it be cocaine or bodybuilding and competitions. She didn't look at the why, but from the outside, everybody was making a judgment about the bodybuilding all of a sudden is super healthy, which it's not. Now, if you're doing any kind of bodybuilding because you want to have a goal, you're goal-oriented, that's fine. But what ends up happening a lot of the times is when you put yourself in a competition, you're being judged. And if you don't win, my question is, do you feel badly about that? Does that affect you emotionally? What does it feel like if you do win, and what does it feel like if you lose? If you are unfathomed by all of it because the goal was just the competition, cool, then you're not attached. But I have seen many people be very attached to if they win or if they lose or if they place, and that the container of a competition just keeps them focused, but then they completely go in the opposite direction when they're done. So the energy underneath is looking at what is fueling this and why are you doing this? And what are you running from? What's out of balance? And what are you trying to accomplish? What feeling are you aiming for? So when we look at people in the world and we make judgments about them, we usually judge their actions, and we make assumptions about why they do what they do, or what they must feel, or how they must believe. We think that certain people who are famous, I see this all the time. There are so many suicides happening, and people keep thinking, well, oh my God, why would that person do that? They're famous. They have money. Everybody loves them. Why would they do that? Because one thing doesn't equal the other. You have no idea. People perform all the time. You might be one of them. You might be someone who performs for everybody in your life, that you're not honest with your spouse, with your children, with your parents, with your boss, with your friends, with yourself. So I want you to focus on the energy underneath and question your own integrity about why you do anything that you do. Not in a super analytical, get caught up in your head for the reason why attached to the story way. Just in a streamlining, why am I doing this? Is this bringing me joy? Do I love this? Do I think I'm going to get something on the back end from this? Does this further me in some direction? Or am I doing it because of what other people will think? Or if I don't, I'm coming from scarcity. I want you to tap into the most important thing, which is what is fueling your decision making. Now, I talked a little bit about this on your Inner Prostitute episode. If you haven't heard that, I recommend going back to that, because that is a beautiful combination of that content plus today. I'm just phrasing it differently because I had somebody ask me recently about the regret, about trying not to feel regret about a decision. So story number 2 is a husband and a wife, and the wife is multifaceted, entrepreneurial, always on the go, very out there, wanting to meet people, be with people, and the husband's the opposite. And had a property before she got married, comes into the relationship, and the husband is bothered and very stressed out by many, many things. And so she decides to be pleasing to sell the property. Now, years later, there's a bit of regret because that property brought in money. And now they're maybe moving into having another property, which feels really good. But when she looked back to try to make peace with that, I could hear I was supposed to do that in order for me to get here. And I heard the resistance to learning the lesson or to understanding or to analyzing or being honest about the reason. Because I don't think, I'm all about making peace with things and understanding why we do things and that contrast is important. But you're also very allowed. I mean, it feels funny to say because of course you're allowed. You're allowed to do whatever you want to do. I'm not giving you permission, but it's okay to not necessarily have regret, but to say, here's the lesson I learned. The lesson I learned is I never want to do that again. The lesson I learned is that was a bad choice. The lesson I learned is that my intuition would have kept the property, but I superseded that and followed one of my core wound tendencies of people pleasing. So I did something against my own intuition to be pleasing to someone who was out of alignment anyway, hoping that action would get them into alignment. When you could recognize that I did that with an ex-boyfriend once. I remember one of my very first, most important relationships was right my first year in college, and that lasted all through college. And he had made me this really beautiful card with our picture on it and drew and colored stuff. Now, I have a lot of stuff from him, even still today. Doug doesn't even know half the stuff that's around the house that came from that relationship. But I had an ex-boyfriend that at one point, when the energy that he infused into our relationship, and he started it, so I just followed suit, was that he declared that he threw away all of his best girlfriend's stuff. Like he had this one girl that was the love of his life, and after he met me, he threw away all the stuff that she gave to him. That was his big gesture to let me know I was now number one. Okay, I was 27, 26, 27, 28. Anyway, and, and that in some way, in a weird, very scarcity way, when you're that age, that feels really good. Like someone did that for you. So somewhere along the way when we were fighting or trying to get back together or he was feeling insecure, what did I do? I took one of my favorite pictures that was created for me as a gift. And I knew when I was doing it, why I was doing it. I did it anyway, knowing that I was going to regret it and that I was literally catering to his out of alignment, scarcity, negative behavior. I cut it up. And I put it in an envelope and I handed it to him because he knew that I had it. And it was my gesture to show him that I loved him and that he was more important to me. Well, in the moment, of course he was, because he was my current boyfriend. But I did it, and I knew when I was doing it that it was the wrong thing to do, that I was giving in to someone else's out of alignment, scarcity-minded, lack of belief behavior and codependent behavior, quite honestly. But I did it anyway. Now, do I regret it? I do. I mean, I don't necessarily know that I would have that picture posted anywhere right now. It might be nice to have to revisit every once in a while to say, oh, isn't that nice? Just like I keep all of my photos from when I was growing up and when I was in high school and when I was in college and after college. I have a lot of photos. And I've never been a fan of cutting photos or destroying photos because that's a part of your life. And it has its point. It has its lessons. You can't erase your past. I don't think you want to erase it. I mean, you might want to because when you look at it, it causes you pain. But being able to look back at your life and say, this taught me something very important, that has value. That led you to where you are now. And whether you think you're in a better place or not, I'm going to tell you, you're closer to where you want to go than you were before. Now, it may not look or feel that way, but if you've continued on a path of consciousness, of asking questions, of wanting and searching on information, which I can only assume you are because you're listening to this podcast, then you are headed in the right direction. Maybe you haven't realized all the things you want yet, but you're on the path. So I did that. I catered to someone else's out of alignment, fear-based scarcity and insecurity, and did something that was against what I believed in order to make them feel better. And of course, I knew we weren't going to be together forever. So why did I do that? Because you're trying to be pleasing. And the problem is that the energy underneath, now had I wanted to do it because it impacted me, that would have been different. If I looked at that and that energy from that photo stopped me from opening myself up to somebody else or loving somebody else more, and destroying it would transmute it. In fact, that's funny that I'm saying that right now. My mother sent me a whole box full of notes from when I was in junior high and high school. Remember that? Some of you who passed notes, now we pass texts. But back when we had to write on a piece of paper and fold it up in a little football or whatever kind of funky way that we had, because there were so many little ways of folding the corners back and right. And I literally have a bag, like a huge, bigger than 8x10 plastic bag full of these notes. And I started to read them at home as I was deciding to keep them or to throw them away. And it's all negative. It's a boyfriend like being really super mean to me and saying, I hate you. I never loved you. And of course I threw that one away. But why was I keeping that? Like, that's really bad energy. So had I come from the position, and I'm now going to burn those, by the way, I'm going to have a ceremony where I'm going to burn all of these. I'm not going to read any more of them. I'm just going to burn them because I don't need to revisit them. Who I was then and who I am now are completely two different people. And the people and the energy of all of that has no business in my now or in my future. So I will be burning those, but I do still have them. I don't plan on reading them, but there's some perspective to be taken. So again, going back to the energy underneath, now my energy underneath destroying these notes is so positive. It's so about transmutation. It's so about accepting and embracing the now and knowing that my past served me, but is in the past for a reason. The energy underneath cutting up the picture of my ex-boyfriend to please another ex-boyfriend or boyfriend at the time, out of alignment. Out of alignment. He was out of alignment. I was out of alignment from doing it. So again, it's not about what you're doing. It's about why you're doing it. So let's go to another story with a client who has decided that in the quest of health and integrity with herself, wants to do a sober lifestyle or wants to think about what that means. Okay. And I went back and I looked at this person's core wounds. And one of the core wounds that she has is being controlled. And when I said, okay, I'm going to do a podcast episode on this, it's not about the alcohol. It's not about the drug. It's not about the food. It's not about the money. It's not about the device. It's about where you are in the moment when you're making a decision about what to do. It's about being in alignment and being in flow. So when I was addressing, and I did address this already in some way, if you decide that you want to stop something because it doesn't serve you, because the reason why you pick up the drink is to numb or take the edge off, yeah, that's not a good reason. That's not a reason out of integrity. If you're feeling really good, it's Cinco de Mayo and you're out having a taco and a taco salad or whatever, and everyone's having fun and dancing and you want to have a margarita, I don't see the harm. If you are having issues with sugar, you're a diabetic and you don't want to drink because sugar turns into alcohol, okay, good reason. You want to be in recovery. You want to heal your gut. Okay, good reason. But again, it's not about whether you drink or not. It's why you would choose to or why you choose not to. And in the case of choosing not to and putting up some rules and some really hard rules actually strengthens a core wound that she has about being controlled. So I actually said that I think this whole idea of cutting it out completely right now, I mean, I said, do whatever you feel is right for you, but you're making these core wounds stick more. For those of you that are on my email list or follow me on Instagram, you have seen that I am going to do another beta 3-month course. It's called Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns. And I've decided to do it because when I looked at this last couple of years, every time I do the core wound exercises, and I'm weaving this in so that you can hear where I'm going with this and the advice that I gave to her and the stance that I'm taking on these decisions that you're making. There is no, not everyone should be doing the same thing, whether it be behaviorally or dietarily or healing. You make choices based on what you need, what's best for you and why, and they're personal choices. They're not everyone's doing this, so everybody should be doing this, or across the board, this is good and this is bad. When you get into that kind of black and white thinking, you create restriction, and restriction creates frustration and feeling controlled and a lack of freedom. And anyone in that position long enough will crack and do the opposite, because ultimately we are free beings, want to feel free. So when we keep putting rules and rules and rules, that doesn't promote flow. That doesn't promote alignment. That is all about control. So looking at her core wound of being controlled, what I've been teaching. So over the years, since I started doing the Empowerment Strategist certification and now the deep dive and then the 3-month, I keep getting better and better at fine-tuning the core wound exercise. And if you've taken my roadmap course or you've heard me speak about this or you've done core wound work, I even have a friend in my mastermind. She's been doing personal development work for 25, 35 years. And I did not try to push her into this work, but she said to me in a one-on-one session, she said, there's something that you're doing different because I have been doing this work, Reiki, energy healing, therapy, blah, 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 all the things for 25, 30 years. And I'm still very, very controlled by my abandonment wound. And I don't know how to get out of it. And I'm hearing you talk about things in a different way. And I don't know the answers to the questions that you ask. And I've never been guided to look at it in the way that you're talking about. Well, I know that, which is why I've decided to do a course called Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns, because this last group, thank you guys, you helped me to clarify one more step that was missing in the core wound pattern exercise. So I'll explain it to all of you guys, because if you've done any work, I'm going to show you what you're missing, or at least what I think you're missing. You can determine if it's accurate for you. When you understand what your core wounds are, most people stop there. They go, oh, I know I've been abandoned. Okay. Well, your core wound is something that happened in the past. It's something that anchored into your subconscious as a belief. And if it was just about the past, which, it's done, it's over, then it shouldn't necessarily affect you now. The reason why our core wounds affect us now is because we individually keep them alive, because we make decisions based on the belief that it created when it happened the first time or second time or third time. So when we look at core wounds, it's not just, oh, my parents abandoned me or my mother abandoned me and now I have a core wound of abandonment. Okay, so what are you doing about it? Because you can't change what happened. Now you can maybe change the conversation or the point of view or the story around it, which would make you feel better. But ultimately, the reason why it keeps affecting you is because we, as the individual, continue to strengthen it and activate it by pulling it forward in our own behavior. So what I've done is create something called the core wound map. And it happened at the end of the roadmap course. It's in the bonus section for anyone that's taken that course. But it was kind of one of the first times I talked about it out loud. I use it all the time, and I was using it before I did that class, and I didn't think I needed to do it. But what I learned is that I needed to spell it out a little bit more specifically for people. So I talked about it in that bonus 5th week of the roadmap to emotional healing. And I've been using it in the groups that I'm in now until this group where I took it one step deeper. So here we have, I do a pattern. My core wound map consists of this. We start with your top 3 core wounds. We identify what those are. And then we move into your habitual neurological pattern and action and feeling that happens. And it's not something you're going to control. You're not going to be conscious of this because by the time you're triggered, you go boom, boom, boom. We go from here's what gets triggered, here's how I feel, and here's what I do, or here's how I react. And we make the map of those things so that anytime you're triggered, you could look on this core wound map and see the pattern. You can see what it just triggered and why. You can see your behavioral patterns and your emotional reaction instantly. It has a lot of clarity. People see it and like, oh, yep, there it is. Oh, yep, there it is. That's why I did that. That's why I feel that way. Okay, cool. So that's where we started with the map. And then I took it to the next level with the map and said, all right, well, how do you, said person, abandon yourself if that's one of your core wounds? So if that's one of yours, I want you to ask yourself, list 3 ways, if abandonment's one of your wounds, that you abandon yourself. So you might say something like, I put others' needs in front of my own. I'm not honest with what I want to do. I'm a people pleaser and tell people what they want to hear. I do not commit or have discipline around health or money or anything that I care about that I say is a problem that I want to change. I'm out of integrity there. So whatever it is for you, I have people list the 3 ways, the top 3 ways, that each one of their core wounds gets embedded and reactivated and strengthened by their own actions and beliefs. All right, now that keeps getting better and better, and I was excited about that. And then we get to the last, most recent, which is taking the proactive approach if I always withdraw. If when I'm abandoned or when I'm feel invisible, I feel sad and withdrawal. If that's the pattern, the circuitry that gets run in my brain automatically, boom, boom, boom. Well, how am I going to heal that? Well, healing is almost like dieting and exercise. It takes proactiveness. You don't just do it once and then it's done. It takes repetitive doing in order for it to become your new normal. It takes experiential physiology in order for it to repattern neurologically. We can't just think about something and then have it be real. We have to live it because the living of it and the expression of it is the energetic embedding of it, if you will. So now I've taken it to the next level of once we look at the top 3 ways someone abandons themselves, we determine what one thing proactively they have to do to rewrite that wound. If you feel abandoned, how do you include? How do you connect? How do you nurture? How do you love yourself differently? And most of the time, it's really uncomfortable. It's going to be something that stretches you. But otherwise, we're just gathering information and then waiting to see how we react next time we get triggered. Like, how's that very proactive? That's why this takes so long to start to heal core wounds, is because it isn't as proactive, it's reactive. And so I've taken this work and now made it proactive. How do I actively repattern? How do I actively send a different message to myself that basically neutralizes and neutralizes the other one because it creates new neural pathways? I mean, this is neuroplasticity at its best because we're stretching into an uncomfortable place, which before you might say, oh, I don't want to do that because it feels uncomfortable. Yes, it does feel uncomfortable because it's outside of your comfort zone, because it means something different than you're used to. So how can we get more? How can we embody more? How can we get the things that we want to get? We have to repattern, and that goes back to upper limit conversations, allowing in more. So this next level, I'm so excited about, and I have to tell you, I feel like a personal trainer again. I feel like now I've been able to do the core wound map and give you the prescription. And now the embodiment of it and the accountability of it is, are you doing the things? What little steps or big steps do you need to take to start creating new neural pathways so the other one can be desensitized, and now we can create a deeper belief that's positive, not negative? Because the ones you're doing negatively are subconscious. So let's pull that back into this last scenario that I gave you about this. I'm going to go on sober living. I'm going to stop drinking because I think I'm out of integrity when I have a drink every night. Okay, that's cool. You can decide that you're out of integrity or moment to moment. I'm sure that 9 times out of 10 you might be, but are you 10 times out of 10? And if your core wound is controlled, why are we going to add more control? Let's add some freedom and flexibility to all of it. To say that in the moment, I'm going to start checking in. So maybe it means I take a few deep breaths. Maybe I put my feet on the ground. I close my eyes. I get into alignment with myself. And I ask myself in my body, I check in with how I feel and say, why am I doing this? Am I out of alignment right now? And I'm trying to use this to numb me back into alignment? Am I looking for relief in this drink that I'm about to have? Because if I am, then that's out of integrity with where I want to be. But if I'm feeling really good and celebratory, oh my gosh, champagne is my favorite thing. Definitely celebratory, fun, total fun. I, years ago, very quickly learned not to drink or not to overeat. Well, the eating's not as easy, but the over drinking or drinking at all when I felt badly, that was easy because I could look myself in the mirror and know that I was out of integrity and I wouldn't do it. The eating, that one was a harder one. Emotional eating is still here sometimes for me, for sure. But again, the flexibility, fluidity, and forgiveness. This person also has shame and being disapproved of as a core wound. So here we have a scenario where the controlling of, if I'm like the line in the sand of drinking or not drinking, is actually activating all of them. The controlled, oh, I'm continuing that core wound. Shame and disapproved of. Oh, if I don't do it or I can't do it, I'm going to judge myself. I'm going to disapprove of myself. Here's another way for me to beat myself up, and then I'm going to have shame about it. So moving forward into this work, again, the energy underneath is about the realization and the checking in with, why am I doing this? Does this serve me? Or do I feel obligated? Or is someone going to abandon me if I don't do it? Am I trying to be people pleasing to give people love? I really want you guys to not judge the action, but the energy underneath it. Because for one person, one action is going to be completely in alignment. And for someone else, it's going to be the absolute out of alignment thing they could do. It's not about the action. It's about the energy underneath. Now, I've talked about the rewire your core wound patterns, rewiring your core wound patterns. This is a new course. It's a beta. There are 6 available slots, but there's only 5 left. And by the time this airs, there might be 4. So there may be 4 spots left for this rewiring your core wound patterns beta. It's everything I just talked about. It's doing the core wound map and then doing this proactive prescription of repatterning what you're doing and doing kind of hard things so that you're sending a different message to your brain. And we're deciding that you are worthy and that you are there for you and that the abandonment is a story and that you are completely in alignment and loved and control, whatever your core wound is. I'm just sort of going on about abandonment because it's an easy one, right? So that you are connected, you are loved, you are taken care of. There is no scarcity, whatever that may be. And each person's prescription, by the way, is definitely based on you. It's not not everyone is following the same prescription. We do it based on your individual. And if someone's too afraid to make a huge leap and do something really dramatic, then we can inch towards it. But the goal is to kind of get uncomfortable so that your brain could go through its circuitry and assess that this isn't scary or dangerous. This isn't going to kill you. And then once it does it a couple times, it goes, okay, this feels good now. And that's what Harville Hendrix and I talked about on episode 91. I think it's 91. It's either 91 or 81 of Spirit, Purpose, and Energy when we talked about your relationship explained. We talked about neuroplasticity and why you want to do the hard thing, because the reason why you avoid it is because you're in fight or flight and the brain believes that you're going to die and you're not. Consciously, you know that. So it's not doing hard things for hard things' sake. It's literally choosing very specific things to do that challenge you for a very specific result. And so if anyone's interested, you can go to jjflizanes.com/rewire, REWIRE, to apply. The course is going to start in May, unless I have all 6 people before that and they want to start earlier. But jjflizanes.com/rewire. This is the beta. It will go up. I feel very confident about this work and what we can accomplish in 3 months with just these 2 exercises. And if what I believe comes to fruition, I will run it again, but it will be more. So if you have any interest whatsoever, you're someone who has said, gosh, I've done so much work, but why is this stuff still plaguing me? Why am I no different? If you've been in the information gathering, which again, listening to a podcast, you probably have been, because that's what podcasts are about. And you know it's time to integrate. That's what this is going to do. So I'd love to meet you and to help you if you feel called. jjflizanes.com/rewire. Currently, there are 5 slots open as of the recording of this, but I have lots of application calls pending between the time I record and the time I publish. So I would not wait if this is at any interest whatsoever for you. And I hope today's show encouraged you to take a minute and think about and feel into why you're doing something that you're doing. And is it in integrity? Are you in alignment? Another way to really say this, to make it super simple in law of attraction, are you in alignment when you're making the decision? Or are you out of alignment? That's even more simple. So go ahead and just notice, am I making the decision and am I in alignment? Because what happens is a lot of you make decisions when you're out of alignment. And then you keep perpetuating out of alignment energy and momentum because you're in reaction mode. What I tell most people is, especially in any of the groups that I'm working with, before you make a big decision, get in alignment first and then ask the question. Do not make a big decision when you're out of alignment, because you don't know what your subconscious wants to tell you or what your higher self wants to tell you because you're out of alignment. You can't hear it. Okay? So the energy underneath is also, are you out of alignment when you're making a decision, or are you in alignment? I hope that has value for you.